If you've ever wondered how much pressure lands on your horse's back at the landing of a jump, well, this video is for you because we just finished running tons of tests, collecting tons of data to have some kind of answer for you. What we did is we took our BodyTrak pressure sensing mat. It's got hundreds of electronic sensors in it that read the pressure under a saddle on a horse's back. And we had our test riders jump a 1 meter jump 3 times with 3 different pad configurations. So we had 3 jumps of essentially no pad, 3 jumps with a fleece pad, and 3 jumps with a squish pad. And we collected all of the data to give you some kind of idea of what your horse is really feeling every time you land from a jump. Now, I'm gonna cut to a little bit of our test so you can get an idea of what it looked like. You see the horses, the jumps, the riders, and then I'm gonna come back with you and share all of the data. So I'll see you in 1 second. Now that you've seen some of the highlights from our test, let's dive into the data. But before I do, it's just really important that I mention that this video entirely is explicitly looking at just the pressure exerted on the landing of a jump. So if you're interested in all the data we've collected on the flat, whether it's English or Western saddles, we have 2 videos on this channel that already contain a lot of that, both of which I've linked here below. But I'm not going to cover that in this video. This is all about the jump landing. And in that vein, you'll notice if you've seen these previous videos that on the flat in general, you're looking at a 2 to 4 PSI pressure over a horse's back throughout the course of a ride. So that varies a little bit depending on the gait and stuff like that. But in general, you're very rarely seeing more than 4 PSI exerted on a horse's back if you're just on the flat. Now, on the jump landing, those numbers go way up, and you will be seeing numbers maxing out at over 10 PSI in this test. So just something interesting to point out how much higher that pressure is on the landing of a jump compared to on the flat. The first thing we're gonna do is get all 3 saddle pad scenarios up on the screen here. So I'm gonna show you the no pad, the fleece pad, and the squish pad max force at jump landing, all here on the screen. And you'll see from left to right, I think the visual representation of each of these landings is so obvious and probably says most of what you need to know. You'll see there's so much red on the no pad landing. It's a much better scenario on the fleece pad landing, and then an even better scenario on the squish pad landing. Now, as you look at these different graphics, wherever you see the squares that are red, they'll have a 10 inside of them, and that 10 represents the PSI, pounds per square inch, exerted over the horse's back. Now, there's a little bit of a funny thing going on here, because our pressure mat, it maxes out at 10 PSI, and because as I said like a few minutes ago, horseback riding is almost always in the sort of 2 to 4 PSI range. So this mat maxes out at 10 because that's more than double the pressures you would normally see in most testing scenarios. So when you look at all of these charts, when you see those red squares, you'll know that that is the max reading the pad gives. So I think it's probably fair to assume that at least in some of these red squares, that PSI rating actually exceeds the 10. We just don't know by how much. Since we have so many of these red squares maxed out in the no pad scenario, it does bring us a bit of a conundrum. Like, how do we actually crunch these numbers if a lot of these numbers should or most likely are higher than our mat is even reading? Well, we have another way to do this, and that is via force. So in short, for the sake of this explanation, force basically just adds up all of the pressure readings under the pad or under the saddle and gives us a readout. So force is more like a way of showing the total amount of force or pounds of force exerted over the surface of that saddle in that landing. And you'll see here, I put them up on the screen, we have the force numbers for each of the 3 scenarios. So for the no pad scenario, we have a force of 726 pounds on landing. For the fleece pad scenario, we have a force of 642 pounds on the landing, and for the squish pad scenario, we have a force of 506 pounds for the landing. That represents a cascade down of about 11%, and then of about 30% if you go down to the squish pad. So from no pad, you get about approximately 11% benefit with the fleece, and then you get approximately 30% benefit with the squish pad, and those are all from force. As you look at the visual readouts of these landings, and then you bring in the force numbers for each pad setup, I think it's pretty safe to draw a conclusion that a fleece pad is a big step in the right direction, and a squish pad is an even bigger step in the right direction. And what it seems in our testing, we've done this with many horses, many riders, many saddles, most of which we just haven't made videos from. But we've continued to find that it seems that just any pad is better than no pad. If you just care about protecting a horse's back, making a horse more comfortable, it seems that just about any pad you use will be a step in the right direction. It's just a matter of what extent you want to help your horse, really. And I think this is really important, because if you've been around horses, if you've been on the internet for some time like we have, you hear these phrases come up over and over again. Phrases like, if your saddle fits, you don't need any kind of special pad to go underneath it. Or a saddle pad is only to prevent friction and keep a saddle clean, and it serves no other purpose. I mean, there's all the many versions of these phrases. And they've been repeated so many times for so long, I think a lot of us just kind of assume them to be true. But the fact is, the data is showing that's not even remotely true. And I think it's important to pay attention to this, because there's a lot of improvement, there's a lot of protection, a lot of value a horse can get by using padding that, jargon like this basically can, deter riders from doing so. In some cases, people might think they're doing the wrong thing if, they're putting a pad on or whatever. So that's why it's so important to us to get this message out, because we actually have data that will help horses if people take it. I mean, we all want to do the right thing. So hopefully this will maybe help a person or two overcome some of that sort of common jargon based that in some cases might embarrass them out of using a saddle pad or something like that. So that's it. I will get off of my high horse. I have given you all the information I have for this video, and I am just so grateful that you've sat here and watched. So if you could please like this video, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, even share it with a friend, that would be wonderful. I'd be very, very grateful. And regardless, I will see you in another video soon. Bye.